Welcome to a special edition of the BS Podcast. We're doing 4 this week. We still have one coming on Wednesday and one coming on Friday, but we had not talked to Jacko during this improbable Yankees playoff run. So we called him. We're going to call him for the Ringer MLB show, but we got a little carried away, and now we just thought we'd put it here. Special edition. Jacko, BS Podcast Hall of Famer, dating back to 2007. And this Yankees revival, we had to get his thoughts. So this podcast, as always, is presented by SeatGeek. Our presenting sponsor. Buy and sell tickets in 2 taps on your phone. Everything fully guaranteed. Basketball fans, $30 off your first SeatGeek purchase on NBA tickets. Use promo code NBAPalooza. It expires on November 1st. Download the SeatGeek app or go right to SeatGeek.com. Also brought to you by TheRinger.com. That's where you can find my football column, football picks, mailbag, whatever I come up with on a Friday, it's there on TheRinger.com. And we're brought to you by the Ringer MLB show. Ben Lindbergh and Michael Bauman are breaking down the World Series and everything that's going on with that for the rest of the week. So there you go. First Pearl Jam, and then my buddy Jacko. Let's go. Johnny.
What's up, buddy?
Special edition.
Awesome.
Calling you at your daughter's track meet on a Monday afternoon. You've had 2 days to digest the Yankees loss.
Indeed.
We should have been doing something every day last week as we ran through this roller coaster ride of Yankees emotions. Yankees down 2-0. Come back, up 3-2. Gotta say, Johnny, the Yankee fans got very confident there, up 3-2. Very, very, very confident. What are your regrets? What do you regret?
Well, I regret not winning the series, obviously, but that's sort of a big overarching regret. But I don't really regret anything. I kept saying on Twitter that it was house money, and it truly was house money. The only game that they absolutely had to win was the play-in game against Minnesota. And after that, anything was gravy because you're facing a Cleveland team that won 22, 23 games in a row, won 102 games, I think, went to the 7th game of the World Series last year, absolute barn burners with Kluber, solid offense, experienced manager Tito Francona, who had already beaten the Yankees, as we all know. So to beat them was really an uphill climb, and to do that was amazing. So then you beat them, and then you have the Astros coming down the pike. They're a 101-win team, best team in the American League all year until Cleveland got hot late in the, whenever they went on their streak and got hot and overtook them for best record. But Houston was the class of the American League all year long. They were first from the beginning. They've been highly touted for years because they have all these young guys that have now blossomed. They have Keuchel. They picked up Verlander, as we well know, at the trade deadline. So it was really house money. And then the Yankees go down 2-0, and you start to say, well, they were who we thought they were, and the Astros were who they thought we were. Then the Yankees come home for 3. They set the world on fire, set New York on fire, and win 3 games in a row. And then, as I also said on Twitter and said to all my friends, it's like the Shawshank Redemption. You know what it taught us? It gave me hope. And what did Shawshank tell us? Hope is a terrible thing. Because then when you're up 3-2, I started getting World Series thoughts. And I'm like, my God, if this team could ever go to the World Series, I started getting ideas. And then, Verlander and freaking Charlie Morton quickly disabused me of those hopes, unfortunately. So, but it was an amazing run. It was a great run for a team that was picked to come in like 3rd or 4th in the AL East, depending on which prognostication you looked at. So everybody agrees the Yanks are coming and the Yanks are on the move, but this year was supposed to be the 81 and 81. I think Vegas had them at 83 wins before the season. So to go to the 7th game of the ALCS is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Pretty good.
I thought we learned from Shawshank that hope was a good thing. So we learned it's a bad thing now, hope?
I don't know. Isn't that what they said? Like hope is a bad thing or hope is a good thing? I always thought it was hope was a bad thing. But then at the end we learned hope was a good thing. I don't know. I'm tired. I haven't slept in a week.
Andy said hope was a good thing, and Red was against hope. He said hope would.
Yeah, that's it.
Hope you're institutionalized, all that stuff. And then we learned at the end that hope was a good thing. But Andy had to be sodomized for 2 straight years from the sisters and
Right.
and be in isolation, and he had to crawl through a 500-yard sewage pipe to eventually get where he needed to go.
Let's hope that's not required for the Yanks to get to the World Series, because I'm not willing to go that far on either account.
You might crawl through like a 75-foot sewage pipe. I don't know if you would go 500 yards. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a lot. But it was a good, all in all, Shawshank metaphors that may not work aside. It was a good year, and I'm happy, but, ultimately it's disappointing. I figured if they went to the World, I was kind of like the natural. I was like Wilford Brimley. All I wanted was a pennant. I just wanted to win the pennant. If they won the American League, I would have been so happy. And, you face the Dodgers and Kershaw, and who knows. But just to win the pennant in a rebuilding year would have been fantastic and would have been really huge. And, they came so damn close and overachieved to such an extent that while of course I'm bummed out and disappointed, I really am not like, nothing got thrown around my living room. Let's put it that way. Like no remotes were broken or anything. It was just like, you look back with admiration. And the thing is, I love this team so much because, in 2009, you had a lot of guys that were not very likable, and they were sort of mercenaries, free agents that were brought in, guys you had no connection with. But, to hear so many years about Judge and Severino and Sanchez and see them perform to some degree on a big stage and to get the team to the 7th game of the ALCS, Todd Frazier with the thumbs down thing and the thickest New Jersey accent in this side of the Jersey Shore, being like, lifelong Yankee fan. It was just heart and soul of the team. It was just a great team to really like wrap your arms around and feel good about.
So, but in retrospect, the Yankee fans could have toned it down up 3-2. I feel like they could have scaled it back a notch. They scaled it back one notch.
Especially if history has taught us anything, we can't start counting our chickens, our World Series chickens, before they hatch. I was very worried because friends of mine were Yankee fans, and there was a lot of, chest beating and a lot of, like, planning ahead and getting ready for the parade. And I was like, 2004 has taught us some things. 2001 should have taught us some things. Like, let's not go crazy here, everybody. Let's just wait and see.
You should have seen it.
Things have happened.
You should have seen it out here in LA, because once Dodgers Yankees was legit in play, there's so many Yankee fans out here that everybody was going for tickets. I had a couple of people in my life that were like, "Hey, man, I need connections for the Yankees Dodgers." I'm like, "You guys haven't won yet. What are you What are you doing? Send that email on Saturday night at midnight." But it just. We've learned,
and I'm sure, like Rob Manfred and everybody, all the other executives are bummed out because the thought of Yankees, Dodgers, New York and LA, the New York and LA markets, all the history of having played each other 11 times previously, throughout the years, like MLB had to be salivating about that. Now, I'm sure they're happy with Houston, who's a feel-good story given everything the city has suffered.
No, there's no way they're happy. Yankees Dodgers would have been the all-time gold mine of a World Series now that the Cubs have already won. I think if you're doing a fantasy,
hang on. What's
We're
up?
running second.
Okay, I'll watch it. Okay. Sitting in my car, my daughter was just giving me a cross-country update. Cross-country, not a great spectator sport. Just put that out there. You kind of watch the start, and then you can watch the finish, and then the rest of the time they're running in the woods somewhere. So she just was giving me their start time. So father of the year here. It's all good.
You might do some things differently with the watchability of cross country.
I don't know. Like, I think maybe we need some like video on the course to watch it on a monitor or something here at the finish line. You're not allowed to see.
Yeah, I would say.
Obviously MLB wanted, when you looked at the 4 teams left, they were like Yankees, Cubs, or Yankees, Dodgers. They were salivating about either one of those, obviously. But
I would say,
so we were all hopeful for that.
If you're doing a fantasy draft of matchups, I would say Yankees, Dodgers would probably have been their first pick.
Yeah, because New York and LA, and absolutely,
and all the young dudes, and you get Judge in there. I mean, Judge is going to be the golden child. I think Yankees Washington would have been interesting too because of for Harper to go up a level, but he was. I don't know if he was 100% healthy, but Aaron Judge, What walk me through your mindset in how many playoff games you played? 13.
13, yeah.
Aaron Judge either would strike out or something good would happen, and there was really no in between. Did you like having him come up with guys on base?
I did not. And the funny thing is, before the Cleveland series started, a guy called into Francesa, and he was like, "Would you pinch hit for Judge?" And for instance, if he came up in a big spot and then needed a hit, and would you pinch hit for him? And Francesa basically laughed him up the air. And then the longer that series went on, I started to think about the caller. I'm like, not crazy, because he was flailing at pitches. He looked completely lost at the plate. If he swings and he misses, or he's not going to hit a home run every time, obviously. But he just looked so bad, and just his swing was awful. He's pulling away off of things, and he just looked overmatched at times. And then other times, he puts the team on his back, and he's got a big double, or he hits a home run. And the one thing you can't quibble about was his defense, because he stole 2 home runs in 2 different against the Astros twice.
Yeah.
So. It was a roller coaster ride of emotions, and you keep having to remind yourself the kid's only 24 years old. He's never sniffed a postseason, never been involved in this kind of pressure before. But to be that susceptible to a breaking ball, he's got an off season to work on that. But obviously, there's some holes and things. But so it was a roller coaster of emotions with Aaron Judge, and then Greg Bird, who was basically dead all year with a bad ankle, and they were ready to ship him out of town, and he came up huge in limited at bats in the postseason. It was so weird. I was much happier seeing Greg Bird at the plate than I was Aaron Judge.
Were you worried?
And if you told me that in July, I'd have been like, "You're crazy."
Were you worried at any point during the playoffs that people were going to start thinking Didi Gregorius was a better shortstop than Derek Jeter? You did think about it a couple of times.
I think that happened. I'm going to tell you something. The guy who's the most bummed out about this postseason run has to be Derek Jeter, because Didi. I mean, the whole thing with Jeter was he was Captain Clutch and big moments, and Didi had some humongous moments. I mean, he hit the 3-run homer to save the season against Minnesota in the first inning. That was Jeter-esque. And he had a lot of big hits and a lot of big moments. He has the record for shortstops now on the Yankees. I know. I made a joke on Twitter, and it was only half a joke about who was the shortstop before Gregorius,
Yeah.
Jeter's got to be so bummed out about the state of his legacy, because like Tino Martinez, who filled Mattingly's shoes, and then he became a beloved Yankee. I mean, you always figure like the guy that follows, Vince Lombardi or whoever, follows a superstar, follows Willie Mays, is going to have a hard time. But the Yankees have lucked out twice now with 2 superstars where their replacements have been, almost as good. So it's been good in that regard.
He was always the Yankee, just when the Red Sox played the Yankees, just judging it on that. For some reason, I was always the most scared of Gregorius in the lineup. And Brett Gardner second.
Really?
Yeah, Brett Gardner, just because something
Brett
about
Gardner
him.
underrated. I mean, he just, fouls off pitches when you need a hit. He had some huge hits this year when they played the Cubs, and they hit a home run in the 9th inning, and that really sort of set them on fire for a while. And just huge at bats, and just very good at bats. Just kills the pitcher. He had the big at bat against Cleveland where he fouled off 12. I think it was Cleveland. All these things meld together now in my aged mind. But
no, he was
Cleveland. He fouled off 12. Yeah, 12 pitch. The 12 pitch at bat just fouled off, and whoever the reliever was, you could see his body I've thrown him everything, and he's making contact. What do I do here? Just working pitchers, and just phenomenal, just huge,
Yeah,
huge. That's the thing. Role players like Brett Gardner doesn't have a huge contract, but he has great at bats like that maybe aren't in the box score, but just wear a pitcher down for the next guy.
I always felt like the Red Sox could pitch to Judge and Sanchez. Not that they're not good hitters, but I always felt like we could get them out. And the Gregorius and Gardner were the 2 guys that I always felt like, oh no, this guy's up. Oh man, this is going to be a 9-pitch at bat.
I mean, Brett Gardner doesn't waste at bats normally, and he has an idea. I mean, that comes with being older and he's a veteran. Because I mean, Sanchez had one of the worst at bats I've ever seen in the history of baseball, where he had a 3-pitch strikeout, and he couldn't have looked any worse. Just awful, oh my! But then he comes up and they'll hit one to the moon. So it's you got to keep reminding yourself that they're young. They've never been here before, so there's stuff to work on, obviously. But the future looks bright. So.
And one of my rules has always been, if you're trusting Aaron Hicks in a playoff series, you probably don't deserve to be in a World Series. He did have one big hit in the.
He did, but he couldn't. He couldn't do anything, and he came up with guys on. He came up first and second. I think it was Game 6. They had first and second, and you're like, God, if Aaron Hicks could do something here, just put a little pressure on Houston. And I mean, Houston's Achilles heel is their bullpen is awful, as you saw in Game 7 where they brought in McCullers.
Yeah,
because they don't trust their bullpen. They have good starters, but their bullpen is awful. So you're like, God, if you can get into the bullpen here, maybe we got a shot. But yeah, Aaron Hicks not great at the plate. He's in there for his defense, I guess, but. He had a couple big hits during the season, but then he just fell apart and he was injured. you don't want him in big spots. You're right.
What are your thoughts on Verlander after that series?
Well, it's not fair. He gets to date or be married to or whatever he does with Kate Upton, and then he gets to pitch that as well as he did and get the ALCS MVP. It's just, there's no justice in the world, Billy. And I'm thinking he must have gone to, I think he went to go see Kobe Bryant's doctor in Germany, because this was a guy that was mediocre for the first half of the season, and now he's pitching like Sandy Koufax. It's unbelievable. Going to Houston rejuvenated him, or maybe it was pitching for something, and Detroit, it was just playing out the string. But I mean, the guy, two of the best games, made the Yankees look like a little league team. He was unhittable.
I felt vindicated because I really wanted the Red Sox to trade for him. He was just starting to pitch well for a couple weeks. We traded for him in my fantasy league. He was just starting to pitch well, and then it was Dombrowski, who was his GM in Detroit. I just felt like
right.
I thought we would step in. I remember I think I tweeted or I said it on pod that I would have traded Pomerantz and a prospect, and people were like, "Oh, that's crazy, Pomerantz." I'm like, look, all I know is the playoffs are going to come around and Drew Pomerantz is going to make it to the fifth inning. I know I'm sure of very few things for the rest of 2017, especially how crazy this year has been. But I know Drew Pomerantz isn't getting out of the fifth inning in a playoff game. I'm just, you can mark that down. And Verlander just seemed like he was sitting there, and people were saying, "Wow, his contract." It's like his contract. He makes $20 million. Who cares? He makes $20 million this year and next year, and then there's some option. Great, okay. All I know is that guy's going to show up in a big game, and and he was awesome. And especially in Game 6, where you knew once they got they get to 3 runs, and it was like, oh man, all right, all right. But I agree with you, though. I think that Astros bullpen, I thought Peacock looked scared. Smoltz was basically saying it. There was one of those games, it looked like Smoltz was saying how, I know you don't like John Smoltz. He was saying how, the moment looks like it's getting to Peacock, and you could really kind of feel it. But he got out of the inning, and they were able to escape. But I think in the World Series, that's going to be a problem.
I think that's their problem in the World Series, because especially when you're in the National League and you have all these double switches, and you're going to, your pitcher might come up in a big spot, and you're going to have to pinch hit for the pitcher, go into your bullpen, and their bullpen is. I was praying, come on, let's run up Verlander's pitch count, and try to get into that bullpen. And the one thing that gave me hope is Keuchel has been a Yankee killer for about 3 years now, and they can't do anything with him, completely unhittable. Just something about the uniform, whatever.
Yeah.
He sees pinstripes and he comes on, and then they get to him in Game 5, and I'm like, God, if they beat Keuchel, I'm like, well, if they could beat Keuchel, maybe they can get to Verlander. Verlander very quickly disabused me of that notion, just rose to the occasion just amazingly. And just those games are, I think I was at my angriest tweeting Verlander game, because it's just so frustrating. He's just mowing them down, and it's just they can't do anything with him. And you're like, the guy's not throwing junk. It doesn't need to be moving, but his fastball is just, it's unhittable,
Yeah, he's
unhittable. The Yankees are a good fastball hitting team, but he's just blowing it by him. It was like, geez.
Yeah, he's throwing 96.
That was disconcerting.
96 and hitting his spots. See, I think we're going to look back at Charlie Morton going five scoreless in Game 7 and kind of wondering how the hell that happened.
I know. It was his gum. I didn't like that. He's touching his pitching hand with his gum. I'm always shaky about that. But I know. I'm like, well, that's what I knew if they lost Game 6, it was a tall order, because it's such a game of momentum, and the Yankees had all the momentum after Game 5, and then Verlander shuts them down, and then you have Game 7, and the crowd going nuts. But I'm like, it's Charlie freaking Morton, And then he looked great, so he got the magic, and it was like, Jesus, if you can't hit Charlie Morton, you deserve to lose, quite frankly, because as good as he was, he's not as good as Verlander or Keuchel. So when he shut the door in Game 7, there's just, what are you going to do? Tip your cap, I guess, and build for next season.
What was Francesa's state of mind during the Yankee run?
Well, I think he kind of he was sort of counseling, circumspection that, let's not get crazy here. But after Game 5, it was like 96 all over again, where he kept talking about how this team reminded him of 96. And, the whole city was getting caught up and everything. And he definitely had World Series fever after Game 5. Totally did.
I don't
the
know.
most surprising thing for me this whole postseason, though, is I can't believe how much I like David Ortiz. Him and A-Rod, honest to God, I can't believe it. I'm like, I would tune in and I'd be like, oh, look, there's A-Rod and Big Papi, like two old friends. Like, they were so freaking good together. Big Papi is legitimate, like, he's funny as hell. I hate myself for it, and I'll deserve all the tweets I get about this. I'm still going to stand by all my anti-Big Papi as a player, but as a broadcaster, the other night, I think it was Game 5, it was Keith Hernandez's birthday, so they show when he had 2 hits in the '82 World Series, and they showed him in the clubhouse with the champagne, and they're all making fun of Keith Hernandez. So whoever the host was, he goes, 1982, Papi, how old were you? And Papi goes, yeah, I'm from the Dominican. I don't know. I could have been 18, 23, 41, 15. So goddamn funny. He and A-Rod together, really, like, if somebody needs to give them, like, a buddy cop movie or show, I'm telling you.
I know.
Or, like, a reality show.
The shame of it was Hernandez is like a solid C-, and the potential of Pete Rose. I know he had to go, and there were obviously great reasons for him having to go. I wish those reasons didn't exist, and he could have stayed, because just even for a week, having him with A-Rod and Papi would have been just unbelievable television. They need to find.
It would have been unbelievable.
They need to find a normal Pete Rose who doesn't have really horrible skeletons in his background, but has that same kind of, I don't know what that guy's going to say next. I was thinking, it's too bad Pedro's not on that show, because I think that would have been a really good combo. But maybe there's somebody out there. It's a really good studio show. It's way up there. I still liked it a little more last year, just because Rose was so captivating. It was like, this guy doesn't know he's on television.
You don't know what Pete Rose is going to say, but A-Rod is so good on TV. It's like scary. It's scary how good he is. Everybody goes crazy about Romo, and I know we all love Romo, but in terms of former players, like A-Rod, I should know the guy who's the host of the show, and it escapes me at the moment, but he would ask A-Rod a question. Kevin Burkhardt, that's right. And he'd be like, A-Rod, how do you hit Verlander's slider? He'd be like, well, KB. And then he's like, Frank, don't you think? And like bring in the other people on the panel. I'm like, God, he's so good. He's like looking at the right camera. He's so natural. As phony as he was in interviews and all the post-game stuff as a player, he's that much as a natural as a host. It's amazing.
Well, that phoniness translates to TV. There's a reason. Hey, do you have any?
But he and a Big Papi, it seems like a legitimate like budding friendship, and like the way they're razzing each other. A-Rod with the ring and trying to put the Yankees coat jacket on. Papi is phenomenal. So good.
Well, I think the thing with Big Papi is whoever he's with, he's going to get along with. Like he could be on that show with like Kim Jong-il, whoever the head of ISIS is right now, and Justin Bieber. And Ortiz would somehow bring everybody together, and I think it would be fine. Hey, do you have anything horrible you want to say? Any last words you want to leave for Joe Buck and or John Smoltz? Or you were convinced? You sounded like a crazy person on Twitter. You were convinced John Smoltz was rooting against the Yankees.
Because I'm also convinced the sun rises in the east, it sets in the west, and the sky is blue. Of course I was convinced of that. I know it's a crazy person to say, like, this guy's rooting against your team. But he and Vasgersian were like, might as well have been wearing Cleveland Indians jersey. And during the Indian series. And then they start playing the Astros. And they were like over the top with the Astros and Verlander. Like at one point there was a shaky call of a strike. I think it was for Verlander. And Smoltz goes, oh, like openly groaning about the strike not being called for Verlander. It was the most amazing. Like even Buck called him out on it, and he's like, "Well, that's because I'm a pitcher." And I'm like, "Get out of here!" And when the Yankees rallied, and when they were down 4-0, and they rallied and scored runs, I don't think Smoltz spoke for an inning and a half. I don't think he said a word. It was so blatant. And the Yankees kicked his team's ass in the '96 World Series and the '99 World Series. '96 when they were heavily favored. So I'd be bitter too. And I don't really care, really. I'm all about we're the evil empire, and it's the Yankees against the world. I'm all down with that. But as frustrating as it was to watch your team get shut down by Verlander, it made it all the more so to have freaking Smoltz act like Kate Upton, rooting for him in the booth openly. So that the anger came from a place of frustration. And Joe Buck, I think, he's a Cardinals guy. He may not have as much anti-Yankee animosity, but he seemed to get pretty excited when things were not going well for the Yankees. So I may have been reading too much into Joe Buck. That was just frustration. But I know Smoltz hates the Yankees. That was clear as day, like blatant, just blatant.
Are you?
And I can't wait till they win the next 5 World Series. And I hope he's the analyst and has to sit there and watch every freaking inning.
Are you excited for Ken Rosenthal and Aaron Judge's TV pilot?
What's that?
They're bringing back Fantasy Island. They did it. Oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's Mr.
Really? That's good.
Aaron Judge is going to wear the Mr.
Mr.
Rourke
Rourke?
thing. No, it was just the size difference of those guys was hilarious. What do you want
well,
the Yankees?
They love doing that with they kept doing that with Altuve and Judge too.
Yeah, that was
they
another
love
one.
that whenever Judge was on second base, they could show the difference between the 2 MVP candidates, you know.
Well, Judge is a mutant. I mean, when he's standing next to, even when he's making those catches in right field, it's like watching him. It's like watching Giannis in basketball or something. It's like, how is this guy
I know, he's so
human
big.
being? How is he tall and fast and coordinated?
I know, he's an amazing athlete.
What do you want the Yankees to get next year?
Well, I don't. That's an interesting question. I mean, you know, they've got Gleyber Torres, right?
Yeah.
So I would like them to I don't know what Todd Frazier's contract situation is.
You really like
I would
Todd
like
Frazier.
them to keep. I really do like Todd Frazier because I think you need like that veteran like cheerleader guy on the bench. I like that. He brought in the thumbs down thing, and he kind of seemed to loosen them up. They weren't like the corporate stiff Yankees anymore. And I think he was good. Like, you know, and he always seemed to, you know, he had a couple big hits here and there.
He did.
I don't know. I just like him. He's a lifelong Yankee fan. He's like living out his dream. And you know, I made a joke. I think when they beat Houston in Game 4 maybe or Game 5, I'm like, you know, give Todd Frazier a $200 million contract, which I was obviously kidding about. But you know, Gleyber Torres, who's the number 1 prospect in baseball now, is hitting off of a tee after he had to have rotator cuff surgery.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they plan to do with him from, you know, what position they plan to have him play. I mean, you know, you got Chase Headley still under contract. So if you could ship Chase Headley out and eat his contract or just get rid of him and eat his money, which I don't think is huge, and have Gleyber play third or have Frazier there and Gleyber and platoon him until Gleyber is completely ready to play third. There's some rumors about maybe they would try to ship Starlin Castro out because they weren't in love with him and have Gleyber play second.
I think that's...
In terms of their pitching...
By the way, Johnny...
You know, Tanaka...
Johnny, you nailed it. I think that's what happens. I think they trade Castro.
They trade Starlin for somebody.
They move Gleyber to second, and they keep Didi Gregorius at short because he's the best shortstop they've ever had.
Well, he's in the conversation for top several.
He's the goat of Yankee shortstops.
Gleyber is coming, and he's got to play somewhere. You know, it'd be nice to get another pitcher, but I mean, in terms of like free agent pitchers, you know, does Jake Arrieta for $125 million do much for me? Not especially. And, you know, Tanaka I think they'll bring CC back with like 1 year and a team option, and he's probably earned that as a fifth starter. He's turned into a, you know, Andy Pettit type crafty lefty.
Yes.
And it came up pretty big in the postseason. So I'd give CC a 1 year deal with an option if he would take that. And I can't see there being a huge market for him. He probably wants to stay. Tanaka can opt out, but I mean, I don't know where he thinks he's getting more money. If maybe if he wants another year or something on the back end, the Yankees might do that. But I mean, he was great in the postseason, but he wasn't great in the regular season. So they got some guys on the farm, Justice Sheffield and Chance Adams, but are they going to be ready? And you're putting big spots, you know, for rookies next year in the rotation. I don't know.
Are you?
I don't know who the big arm is.
You interested in?
Big starter.
Are you interested in David Price or no?
No, I'd rather hit against him. That does good things for the Yanks. So I'd rather face him than root for him.
That's fair. It'll be interesting to see if the Yankees stick with the DNA that they built here and not audible like the Red Sox did. The Red Sox had this chance, especially after they won in 2013, when all the Red Sox fans were like, "We've won 3 titles. Like, pinch us. Like, we can't believe this. We'll support anything." They could have just built around a young team, and instead they went and spent all this money on. They almost reverted back to the 1970s, 80s Red Sox of, let's just go buy some 80s, 90s Red Sox. Let's go buy some guys, and a lot of them didn't work out. I would have much rather just watched them build a team around the young guys, which is what the Yankees have a chance to do. It'll be interesting to see if they completely audible from that and overpay Arrieta and trade Gleyber Torres for Manny Machado and, you know, do all the old things the Yankees would have done 25 years ago. Who knows?
Right. I mean, that's why this Yankees team is so lovable, and it's really like, you know, from the core 4 days, you got a little taste of this, but it's really in their history very un-Yankee-like.
Yeah.
At least in my lifetime. In the I shouldn't say all time, but in the Steinbrenner era, I was born in 1970, so Steinbrenner bought him in 73. So the Yankees I've known my whole life of just going out and spending money on free agents and just bringing in mercenaries, but this team, like, to hear about these guys, hear about these guys for years, and then, like, the baby bombers, which I hate as a name, but anyway, we'll go with that for now.
Nah, it's awful.
Like, to see them, to have them, hear about the baby bombers and then see them accomplish it, and it's like you feel like a connection with them because they're, like, your homegrown guys, and everybody always feels closer with that, The Red Sox had that with, Pedroia and with Nomar and, with Hall of Famer Xander Bogaerts. They always had, Mookie, all these guys that that were homegrown,
We have it now. We could have had it.
Fans like that better, Fans like that better.
Once you've won the World Series, once you've won the World Series, I just want to root for guys that I've watched for a bunch of time. I'd much rather build from the ground up. And we have Betts and Devers and Benintendi, and that's why I want to see them build.
Right. Yeah, me too with the Yankees. Now, the Yankees have that with, Severino, Sanchez, Judge, and, Betances, who's kind of fallen off the radar, and maybe they can get him back on track. But, and you hear, obviously I don't want them to do anything with Gleyber Torres, but you're Justice Sheffield or Chance Adams. But the Yankees have this allegedly wonderful farm system. So if there's some guys there that you could trade for established players,
I
don't mind if you trade some guys on the margins or a couple guys that maybe will turn out to be really good, but you did it to supplement what could be a deep World Series team or a potential dynasty team like what the Cubs, are looking at. There's a lot of good young teams in baseball. So if you have to trade a couple prospects to go get a starter or go get somebody, it's just nice to have the opportunity to do that. But because, I keep saying, well, the Yanks are coming, but, Cleveland is young for the most part. They're good. Houston is young, and, they're obviously very good. They're in the World Series. The Red Sox have some young guys that are okay. They have a Hall of Famer, Xander Bogaerts. If they go get Stanton, they're obviously scary. So there's no guarantees that we can just pencil in. We're going to be in the hunt for the next 5 years. You like to think so, but it's exciting. It's a good place to be. I feel hopeful about the future, and that hope is either a good thing or a terrible thing. Whatever Shawshank taught us, I'll go with that. So,
Johnny, I think you have to go because I just saw on ESPN1 that your daughter's cross country. They just passed the 5-mile mark. They're running through the woods.
I watched the start, and I think it was the boys, and there was like a couple kids got like trampled. I think we had like a Tour de France type crash at the start. I know that's missing, but a couple kids went down. Like, I'm going to say this for cross country: it's not a great spectator sport, and the starts are rough. Like, it's dicey at the start. Everybody's like running for the whatever and like bumping into each other. It's rough.
Well,
not ideal.
This is a good time to announce that you're going to be the host of the Ringers Cross Country podcast, which will be launching next week. Ringer XC.
It's going to be me, A-Rod, and Big Poppy in the studio.
You can't lose. Johnny, good to talk to you. Good to catch up. Talk to you soon.
Good times.
All right.
All right. Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks to Jacko and thanks to SeatGeek. Don't forget, NBA fans, if you want to buy tickets for the first time on SeatGeek, you get $30 off if you use promo code NBA Palooza. It expires on November 1st. Download the SeatGeek app or go right to SeatGeek.com. Back tomorrow with Miles Teller on the BS Podcast. Until then.